Mercedes-Benz W163 and other Mercedes M112 and M113 engines, valve cover gaskets, and breather cover reseal. Check the pinned comment or the description for the timestamps. Diagnostics is next. Parts are shown at about the 2-minute mark. The right side of valve cover job starts at about the 3-minute 20 mark. The left side of valve cover job starts at about the 56-minute mark. Before I start this job, I'm going to spend quite a bit of time cleaning this up because I don't want anything falling into the valve train area once we get the valve cover off. You can see there that shiny part there. That's some oil leaking out of that breather cover. You can see back there, that's that old sealant. It's just leaking. On the, let's see, I think on this side. Okay, you can sort of see it there, that shiny. That's from the valve cover, and that's going to be leaking onto that exhaust manifold. That's when you'll get that kind of burning oil smell when a little drop hits there. If you see this design here, which is a Torx, those are the original aluminum screws. You do not want to reuse those. You want to get replacement screws. We're looking underneath here. This is the oil pan and that's the drain plug, and what can be tricky about diagnosing this is from above, you might not notice anything even on the sides of your valve cover, but look what you see from below. See that? That's the exhaust manifold there, and that is oil. If I can get this to focus, that's oil dripping out of the head through that bad valve cover gasket, and then you can see it's not a huge streak, but it just accumulates here. Now we're looking over on that left side head, and you can see there where that on the bottom of the exhaust manifold, that's where some oil is dripped out. Here are some parts for this repair here too. You can see there's 2 valve cover gaskets because I'm going to do both sides. There are also 4 hoses. I might only need 3, but I got all 4 of these hoses because these tend to break. I will put up all these part numbers, and I'll put the part numbers up as we install them. It's important to make sure that you get these here. These are the replacement screws for the breather covers if you're resealing those. These are stainless steel, and you can see they have a hex head. I think that's an H4. If you look on your breather covers and it has a Torx head, those will be the original aluminum screws, and you do not want to reuse those. There's a high risk, high likelihood that they will break. We're also going to need a good RTV for the breather covers if you're doing that. I will put up the Mercedes-Benz part number for their RTV, which is supposedly very good. It's a Loctite product. I'll put up that part number. I'm actually going to use this. I've had really good success with this over many years. This is Permatex Ultra Black. We'll start on the right side, and that's going to be this gasket here. I'll show you on the part number. If you're doing the 112 engine, the V6, it's the same part number, just has 112 here instead. And the 0321 is the right side, the 0221 is the left side. We're just going to take this valve cover gasket out of the bag and lay it out back on the bag, because we'll use the piece of cardboard as our template for the valve cover bolts. I'm going to start over here on the right valve cover. This is the valve cover. There's the head. There's the valve cover gasket there in between, and you can see there's a couple spots where the cover kind of goes over the gasket, so the gasket kind of tucks in there. We'll just have to keep that in mind when we reinstall this so that we don't have any folds. We'll use a mirror to make sure that we have it in the right place all the way around. We'll remove the air duct all the way back to the throttle body. Starting right here on the air box, there are some clips. I think there's 6. There's one here, another one there, one here, a couple up here. Be careful because these really spring back, and if they hit your hand it kind of hurts. And then there's one on this side, and that ought to be it. And then up here there's one, and then also one just like it below there. Put my hand on that. There we go. Now we can lift this up and pull it off with that duct just like that. You can see the coil packs there. Here's one, and you can see there are 2 spark plugs in each cylinder, so there's 2 wires coming off of each coil pack. I'm not going to disconnect the the wires from the spark plugs. So I'm just going to move this to have a little bit more room to flip the coil pack back. Right down here you see this coolant hose. If you follow that back, it just goes there to the auxiliary pump, and I'm just going to pop it out of this little groove here on the side of that box, so when I pull it out I can pull this out completely. Now we can just pop this out. I'm just going to pull it up and it'll pop out like that, and I have to wiggle it off this duct here. It just comes out just like that. It's just these little deals here that went into these grommets. There's 3 grommets. Now I have more room. Back here, I'm also going to just pull this auxiliary pump up. It's just sitting, it's got this rubber kind of brace around it, and it's just on a little piece of metal there. You just pull it up and it'll come off. That way we can just kind of move this hose down a little bit. It just gives us a little better access. This is the little housing part for the MAF sensor. We don't need to undo the electrical there because we can get it out of our way by just undoing this clamp here. That is a 7mm, or you can just use a screwdriver. I'm just going to loosen that up. Once that's loose, you could just kind of squeeze the hose and this will pop out, and we can just lean this to the side. This here is like a resonance baffle, and there's just a little thing on the bottom that kind of holds it in place, so you just want to get under it, kind of wiggle it, and it'll pop out. There it goes. That little part right there. That's the part there. You're just trying to get it up off of this little part here. This part of the hose can come out as one piece, but we got to remove a couple things that are in our way. This is the dipstick that doesn't have a dipstick for the transmission. That mounting is to the valve cover, so we'll remove that 10mm and pull that back, and then also that looks like that might be an E10 Torx, outside Torx, and that will be for this duct. So we'll remove both of those. And that is a 10mm there for the transmission dipstick. There's that fastener there for the dipstick tube, so we can turn that out of our way just like that. It's a little easier to get on that bolt there for the duct if you use a wobble, because it can't quite get a straight shot on it. There's that fastener there. Now over here on this side, this hose here that goes into the breather cover on the left side, that connects to that air duct. So we either need to disconnect it here, or if you can reach where it connects on the air duct, disconnect it there. I'm going to try disconnecting it here, and you can see it's a pretty old hose. I'm going to replace that hose. These hoses are pretty notorious for being pretty bad. They kind of fall apart, they get real brittle. What I might actually do is just cut it here so that I can pull it off, but let me see if I can remove it. And you'll see this thing is already wanting to fall apart. Almost. There it is. Alright. You want to make sure you pop that hose off of the breather cover, and you might be able to see the other end of that hose where it goes into the duct. It's pretty hard to see. If you can possibly reach it, that's another option, to disconnect it from there. I'm going to leave it like this and try to get it out. Not really going to be able to show this, but you got to reach back here. It's a lot more difficult on the the V8 than it is on the V6, because you just don't have so much room. There's a little clasp. You're just going to push that clasp down and pull this duct out. So now you can see we can kind of wiggle this a little bit. This is just the coolant drain hose. I just moved it out of my way. I'm standing on a little stool to make it a little easier to reach in, because it is kind of a long reach. But once you get it off of there, you can kind of wiggle it, and then on the top here, there's a little thing I'll show you in a second. Gotta kind of push it off. Let me show you that. Right up here, you see how that's just clasped on the plastic. I just have to either pull it off. I might have to get in there with a piece of plastic pry tool and just kind of pry it back. Yeah, I think I'm going to lift up the coolant reservoir like I did on the EGR video a few years ago. I'm just going to undo those two. I think those are 10mm fasteners. and put a piece of wood up there, give me a little more clearance. Just took out those two nuts there, and I'll pull this off. Get a little bit more room maybe. You don't have to do this on the V6, but you have enough of them. So those two fasteners out, I just pulled it out, and you can see kind of moved it a little bit this way, and I think that'll give you just enough to get this out. I wish I had a technique, because I remember putting this thing back in, and it's just as much fun to put back in. Okay, there we go. All right. All right. Put those two nuts back in there. This here is the feature I'm talking about. So when this is in the vehicle like that, you're reaching around like this, and you kind of have to get your thumb under here and just push it down, because you can see it's kind of like a hook. Now we can see the whole right side valve cover there. I'll take a peek under here and take a look at the gasket to see if it is leaking. Let's see. Oh yeah, there, it's leaking there. Alright, leaking there. And oh yeah, looks like it's leaking there as well. And it's leaking there. And might be leaking down here too. Yeah, looks like, oh yeah, it's leaking down there as well. So this is a timely repair. This here, that's that oil leak I was mentioning, since the exhaust manifold is right there. The oil will drip on there, and then you'll get that burning oil smell. There's a look there on the corner where it seems to be leaking the most. That's that back corner there. And that's where we're going to have to be real careful putting the gasket back on, that we don't accidentally get any folds or anything. I spent some time cleaning up around the valve cover, especially on the top here, where it's more likely that some dirt will fall in. I don't want any dirt falling in when we take this valve cover off. And also, it looks like there are 11 bolts total. Again, this is the V8. I think there are 9 bolts on the V6, the 112 engine. So there's my very sketchy sketch there with the breather cover area, just indicating a spot for each bolt, so that when I take them out, I'll put them in here and keep them in the same order, or the same position for installation. Now we'll do the electrical for each of these coils. You can see there's a little clasp there, and you want to be real careful because they can break very easily. You're going to press on the top and then push this up. You have to kind of wiggle it because there's like a waterproofing seal in there, and you might want to use a pick. Just be real careful because it's pretty easy to break these tabs. I'll try to show you on this one here. Might be a little bit easier to see. You can see how I'm pressing that tab. You got to be real careful. And I just broke it. But that's how it comes up. You see, I just broke that tab. So I'll have to do a repair on that. Unfortunately, I broke a couple of those connectors, so hopefully I'll be able to come up with a repair option. I just numbered them 1, 2, 3, and 4. We need to slip this hose off here to the breather cover. And this one, I think I replaced this a couple years ago when I did the EGR valves, because this one feels fairly flexible, but I'm still going to replace it probably. We'll see. There we go. Okay. Now we'll remove the mounting bolts for each of these coil packs. You can see in there there's a T30 screw. There's one in each of them, so we'll remove that. With that fastener loosened, we can just kind of pull it out and then tip that fastener out. And there's one there. And now we can just move these down like this. That'll give us plenty of room. We don't need to disconnect the spark plug wires. But if you'd like to do your plugs at this time, you do have plenty of access. We just want to do that for the rest of these coil packs. There are the coil packs there. I just have them kind of resting on a couple of rolls of paper towels just so they don't go back too far. I don't want to stress those wires too much, but this gives us plenty of access here. Something you might want to check beforehand that I just noticed on this is that, see, a couple of these fasteners are real chewed up. So somebody has been in here before, done a valve cover gasket, and they chewed up some of these real bad. See, I can't even get that to grab on there. This one's not bad. You'll see that it does go on here real well. So it's not all of them, but it's 4 of them. And there are 11 bolts all around. I'll put up a part number in case you end up with this problem. I just ended up going to the junkyard and grabbed some. These are all the shorter ones, are all the ones that don't go through the breather cover. And then on this side, there are 2 of the long ones that go through the breather cover. We'll do a slight video interruption here and jump over to this V6. That breather cover is leaking on this V6, and it has been resealed, and it looks like those are the original fasteners. Those are the aluminum fasteners. You can see that different gasket material around there because it's like a white. So I am going to reseal it on this side. The valve cover is different, obviously, on the V6, the 112, than it is the 113, which is what you've seen in the video so far. But that breather cover on this side is the same. The breather cover on the left side, or on the left side, is different between the 112 and 113 engines, but this will be the same as what you would do on the V8. I'm just going to show it on this V6. You can see we got those original aluminum screws there, those T25s. So hopefully they don't break. We'll see. We'll see what happens. Very loose, so that's good. Didn't break. Let me jump over here to this one before I pull that out too far. Alright, also very loose, so that's good news. I'm going to take these screws out completely. There are those 2 aluminum fasteners, and they can go straight to the trash, so they're not mistakenly reused. You'll see this in greater detail back when we go back to the V8. But what I'm going to do here is for uninstalling the valve cover, I'm just going to break free each one of the bolts. We'll start on the perimeter and kind of spiral out, so kind of like this. I should say spiral in and then work towards the center. Then alternatively, when it comes time to put it on, we'll fasten the fasteners like this in several passes. So to take it out, we'll start on the ends. To put it back in, we'll start in the center. So I'm just going to go in. These are all E10s, and it doesn't look like any of these are chewed up like the ones on that V8. So I'll just break these free. Just break that free, and then come down here. And we'll go over here. Down here. And then we'll go like here. And here. You get the drift. And over here. And down here. And then up here. And I think that was all of them. Yeah. And like I said, there are 9. Now I'll take these out completely since we have those other ones broken free. And these are going to be the long bolts. So here's one of those long bolts. So I just took those 2 out, and there's also just 2 on the V8. And now what I'll do is, you don't want to pull on this because there's a chance you might break that. I'm going to get under here. I'm just going to try to just barely get it up if I can. Prying doesn't seem to be working on this, so I'm going to give it a little tap. You can see I cleaned up some of the gasket maker around the edge here, and I'm just going to use this block, and I'm going to put the block here, strike the other side with a dead blow hammer, and just try to get this to kind of hopefully dislodge up, because it's really on there. Let's see what we can do. Not the best angle, but let's see what we can do now. It's finally going. There we go. All right. I also wanted to mention, if you happen to have a real short pry like this is actually a scraper, but what you can do if you're not able to get anything down there, you can put a block like this and get under this part and just try to lift it up there. It's not the best angle, but as you can see, it's better than nothing if that's the only place you can grab on. You need something pretty short though, because you run out of real estate real quickly over here. The reason I'm going to stop there and not pull that whole thing off is because I am going to take this whole valve cover off. This gasket's leaking too on this V6. So we'll jump back to that V8 with the chewed up fasteners, and then just in a little bit you'll see the reseal on this V6. Hopefully you can see all the bolts there, and there are 11. My smallest spline drive socket is a 10, and that obviously isn't going to work on there. So I grabbed an 8mm 12 point, but that will not get a bite on there either. So I noticed on this spline drive, this is my 8mm, the only 8mm spline drive I have is on this ratchet, and I noticed it was taking a pretty good bite on there. So I'm going to give this a shot with this. Alright, yeah, that wasn't even that tight. So that is good news there. I did notice that the E12, like here, the E12 will fit on that one that's a bit chewed up. So I might try that. I'm going to go back to the E10 for these two, which don't appear to be chewed up. So we'll go, we just did that one, we'll just do this one here. Let's see. Okay, that's not even tight. Then we'll come over here, this one up here, which didn't appear to be chewed up. Alright, and then we'll go down to this one here. Alright, so we got those guys. So now, again, we'll just keep walking back on the perimeter. We did those two. Go up here. Cool. Let me see if I can grab onto this one. Oh yeah, that was one that was messed up. I'm going to use an E12. Yeah, E12 for that one. It's too messed up to fit the E10, but okay, E12 will work. And then we'll go back to the 10. So I'm doing like musical sockets here. Hopefully in your case you will be able to just hit these all with 10s and 10s. Okay. Now this one here we'll do, oops. And I think this one was okay here. Oh no, that one's chewed up. I'm going to try the 12 on that. Yeah, a little bit of slack, but not too bad. So yeah, that 12 seems to be working okay. And I think that was this one. And I think I already did this one. Yep. Okay, so that's all of them. So now we can just go ahead and remove everybody and put them into our template. And these last two bolts, just to reiterate, these little short ones are all of the ones except two long ones that go here. With all those 11 or 9 bolts out, this is the last chance to do any cleaning that you might need to do to prevent anything from falling down. We're just going to move the dipstick down here kind of a little bit out of our way. I got the paper towels sort of in the way. I think I'll be able to clear it there. Now we just got to pop this valve cover off. It's just being held in place by that gasket, and it seems like usually the gasket stays on the head. You don't want to use anything that's going to mess up either the valve cover or these valve covers are like a magnesium or magnesium alloy, and the head is aluminum, so I'm just going to pry with the plastic piece here. See if I can get it a little encouragement. It seems like this might be a good spot to pry right here with the corner of this little plastic tool, because I can kind of, okay, it just moved there, yeah. So what I just did, you saw me just kind of pulling it back, and then I came back over here again and just gave it a little encouragement, and that seems to have done the trick. Okay, so this valve cover gasket seemed to be coming off in part with the cover and in part on the vehicle. So I'm gonna encourage this, I think, to just come on up. Let me go like this. Get the transmission dipstick a little bit out of my way. There we go. Yeah. Okay, I'm just gonna go ahead and grab that gasket. Just move it out of my way a little bit. There we go. Grab that. Okay. There we go. You can see there in a couple of spots on the top there is some dirt carefully balancing. We don't want that to fall in. So I'm going to address that right now. I just have some brake cleaner on one of these towels. You see that there? Just to grab this so none of that falls into the valve train area. I'm going to do that on all of those spots. And just really take your time on this. It's always pretty cool to look inside an engine when you got the chance, so let's just have a look what we can see here. You can see this is a timing chain driven big old V8 engine, and there are 2 spark plugs per cylinder. There's 1 exhaust valve and 2 intake valves per cylinder. So we've got a group of 3 valves here, a group of 3 valves there, 3 there, and then 3 there, and then all them spark plugs. I draped some plastic over there to protect all those parts while we work on the valve cover now. Here is the valve cover, and what we're going to want to do before we put the new gasket in is just clean this channel out, get all the oil out of there. And I'll mention this in a minute when I put the gasket on, but some people like to put a little dab of RTV here and here, and likewise there and there, since that change in direction sometimes becomes a leak point. I don't know if I'm going to do that or not. I'll make that decision a little later. When we're cleaning this up, you want to take note of any dirt areas like this with that bolt hole, and just vacuum clean that or knock that back like that. Knock it back into the hole, just so it doesn't end up inside the top of the valve cover here. The other thing is with your breather cover, whether you have it on like this, like you see here, or if you've got it off. I'll try to get a look in there with the camera, but there's a little tiny hole inside here, and it can get obstructed. So you want to make sure that you can pass air through here, so just blow on that. I'll just put a hose on this real quick. Show you what I mean. So I just have the hose there. I'm just going to blow into the other end of the hose, and you want to be able to hear air passing through. So hopefully you can hear that. I can hear it. If you can't hear air blowing through there, then you need to get in there and clean that out. There you can just see that little hole I'm talking about. And so if that gets obstructed, then you're not going to have any ventilation through there. So you want to just get in there and get that cleaned out. So back to this right side valve cover on the V6. This is the one that I am resealing this breather cover on. And you can see I spent some time and got it cleaned up. It takes quite a while to clean this up properly. You need to get all around this ridge on both sides, take out all the RTV, and make sure that hole is clean, and that little hole that you saw in the V8 valve cover. You got to get in here to these screw holes and clean them out, because there'll be some RTV in there and maybe even some little bits of aluminum. These are the through holes. Just clean that out, that hole there and that, and then make sure this ridge is real clean, and also this part of the ridge there. Then on the cover itself, that's where we're going to apply the RTV. So we're not going to put the RTV here, we're going to put it on the cover. So you got to get this real cleaned up, this whole channel all the way around. Then this part of it here that goes through the middle. around these bolt holes there and then around that flange. So you want to get this nice and clean. So what I did was I used a plastic scraper and scraped it. You want to use plastic if you can, because you don't want to leave Mars and stuff. Then I took some brake cleaner on a paper towel and I went through and just cleaned this. It takes quite a while. It does take a while, but you want it to be clean so that the RTV seals properly. I think it's a good idea to put the valve cover on the head and then just put in the perimeter bolts, just hand tight, just to have them there. And then at that point, once you have the valve cover on the head, obviously with the new gasket on it and all, then to open up your RTV and start the reseal to put the seal on here. The reason is because you want to work quickly. You only have about 10-15 minutes to get this back together once you have that RTV on there. And so obviously you can work a lot more quickly if you already have the valve cover on the head. Then you just come back, pop that on. If you don't want to do it that way, you can reseal it and then put it together on the bench, put those two fasteners in, then bring the whole thing in, put it down, and then get all those bolts torqued down. Now just in inspecting this old gasket here, it doesn't appear to have any obvious faults. It could just be a leak that developed over time. This is where it was leaking down here on that end. It is a Mercedes-Benz gasket. You can see that it's got the part number right down there with the Mercedes star. This is how that's supposed to be shaped. It does have that kind of little cutout shape there. You'll see that on the new gaskets. I got that channel cleaned up real well. All I did was just put a little brake cleaner on a paper towel and just kind of go around a bunch of times. Took a while, but I just took my time doing it just to get that nice and clean. And so now we'll go ahead and install that new gasket onto the valve cover. This shape here is useful for figuring out the orientation of the valve cover there. You can see. So this side is the side that goes into the channel, and this is the side that's going to go up against the head. So I'll just push this into place all the way around, and you want to make sure you get it pushed into place real well. There is the gasket in place, and you want to just take your time and go around all the way around to make sure that everything is in. And you can see here on the end, that's the part where that goes on the outside, I should say on the inside like that, and then this goes on the groove. So make sure you do that right. And then you can see also there's another part on this side that's the same way right here. So you want that gasket to go on the inside like that, and then this that part of the gasket to go on the inside, and then that part to go in the groove. Just make sure it's in there all the way, and then when it's in there all the way, it won't fall out when you flip it upside down. If you're having trouble with the gasket, if you have an aftermarket gasket, you might run into some issues just from what I read online. Some people said that the gaskets weren't quite fitting right, the aftermarket ones. So that's why I bought the Mercedes one. And right there, and the same spots on the other side is where some people like to put a little dot of RTV between right in the gasket channel there, and then slip the gasket on. I'm not going to do that because this gasket seems to fit real well in those spots, but you may decide to do that. Next, I'll swap out these chewed up fasteners for some replacement ones there. And it's also a good idea to take a little bit of time on each of the bolts with the wire brush and just clean up the threads. Here's one of the longer bolts, one of those two longer bolts that goes through the breather cover, and the rest of them are all the shorter bolts. I'm just going to get the threads cleaned up real well, and if there's anything on the bottom, you want to clean that off too. Then here on the head, you just want to get the mating surface all cleaned up, so you can go around with a little brake cleaner on a towel, on a paper towel, shop towel, and just get it cleaned up. Places like that there where you've got some dirt that might be caked on. As you can see, that's outside of the valve cover area. And so you don't need to worry about that. You just need to clean the area where that gasket is going to be setting. So just go all the way around and clean the oil off of it. And just get it ready for the new gasket. Don't use any kind of metal tools or razor blades, nothing like that. Only use plastic tools, since that's aluminum, and it'll be very easy to scratch it. If you get a scratch, you might end up with an oil leak. So just use plastic, or like I said, brake cleaner on a shop towel works great. You can get in there with your finger on the bottom side here. So we got the mating surface clean, the bolts are clean, the gasket's in place, and we're ready to put this back on. So we'll just get this valve cover back in place. Gonna have to work around that transmission dipstick again. So I'm just going to push it back a little bit and use the bolt holes as my guide as I push this back in place. And let's see, there we go, right there. All right, I'll grab some bolts and start just putting these in by hand. We'll go with the corners first. Grab one of these long ones for up here, top corner. Down for this bottom corner one down here. You want to make sure you get the dipstick back aligned where it needs to be. So just kind of lift it up, put it over there. So it'll show you what I mean in a minute. That there's what I mean on this one. Just make sure you put the dipstick bracket back in place. And we're just going hand tight right now. We got a few bolts in place now. Just holding the cover on. And before we go and push them all in, just make sure that the gasket is where it should be. There we go. So remember down here, we don't want any folds there. And this is the part here and up here where that gasket kind of tucks behind that part on the valve cover. So make sure that that's like that. That looks good. And then have a look up at the top. Just make sure there aren't any folds or anything all the way around here. And then back under here, this camera, cell phone camera works great for that. Or you can use a mirror. Just make sure you don't have any folds. Back over here as well. I might need the mirror for that. You probably can't see it, but I can see the gasket there. And it looks good. I do not see any folds there. I'll carefully look. That all looks good, so we will continue. Put in the bolts in. Now I'm going to get to work on resealing this, and if you're using this Permatex, I don't know how it is on the Mercedes one because I haven't used it. You can get a pretty small hole. You don't want to get too carried away because, like I said, it's going to be pretty small, so I'm not through there yet. I'm going to just slightly cut it at an angle, and looks like that's probably pretty good there. As a reference, when you're cutting your nozzle for your RTV there, a nickel is a little less than 2 millimeters thick, and 2 pennies are a little less than 3 millimeters thick. So you want to be between a nickel and 2 pennies, closer to a nickel size. Again, the name of the game is trying to stay in that channel, which is pretty tricky business. I'll show you what I mean here, why I say that. So there is 1.84 millimeters on this one nickel. And if we take a couple pennies, stack them together, you can see we're at about 2.8. So your goal is to go for that 2 millimeters or so. So very thin. This is not a lot of RTV at all. So try to keep it between those two. If you have the Permatex, you can use this on the back to punch a hole in it, and then screw this cap on. On the Permatex, you kind of have to bleed it. There'll be some air, and so to do that, you can just put something around like that and just barely press down on it, and you can see it'll just start. The air will come out, and a little bit will start coming out the tip. I'll make a little test line here to see what kind of bead I can put down with the nozzle like this. And that looks like that's going to be good, nice and thin. So I'm just barely cut it open. Let's see if I can work around the camera here. I'm going to just first go around the flange here on this bolt hole, and again, it's just going to be pretty light. Oh, I'll have to wipe a little bit off right there. I just couldn't quite work around that. Okay, there are my bolt holes there, so now I'm going to go ahead and try to put it into this channel here. See what I can do on this channel. I got it kind of propped up right there, so it's level. Let's see what I can do. Try to get it started right here at the corner, and then just kind of lay it down a little bit ahead like that. You gotta squeeze as you're going along. A little tricky. That looks good so far. Elevating it to kind of level it out seems to be helping a little bit. I'm trying to work around the camera, but then you just kind of get it started and then lay it in like a rope. I hope this is gonna come out on the camera because I can't look at the camera and do this at the same time. Try to get this middle part now. Just try to get it to catch onto the other one. And then just lay it down. Oops. It seems to work better if you don't actually touch it. If you kind of make the RTV stream and then kind of guide it till you get to where you need to go, like there. Oh, I'm going to have a little extra there. I need to grab my razor blade to cut that. Okay, so there's my application for this breather cover, the right side one on that V6. I'm going to go ahead and put this on now. So this is the right side here on this V6 with the breather cover that I am doing, and we just have these two fasteners, the new stainless steel ones. I'm just going to line this up and drop it into place, hopefully not smear anything. And then I'll I'm going to use the bolt holes kind of as a guide to make sure I'm getting in there okay. Just like that. Then I'll just put these in. The torque on these is very low. We'll get these in and torque down. Got my torque wrench here on 35 inch-pounds. I'll just make a couple passes back and forth. Little quick note here, as I mentioned before, you want to try to get these bolts all fastened down within about 10-15 minutes. After all that's complete, you'll want to wait about 24 hours before you start the engine if you're resealing the breather covers to allow the RTV to cure. Okay. Just double checking. Alright, now since we've already got those other valve cover bolts in place, I'm just going to put these two long ones back in, and we'll head back over to the V8 and I'll show you the tightening sequence on the V8. Now that we've got all of the fasteners in, I'm going to kind of work from the inside out, just kind of spiraling, and I'm going to do several passes. Our final torque is very low. It is 80 inch-pounds. So I just got my torque wrench set to 50. I'm just going to go all around at 50, and then I'll probably do like 65 and, you know, 80 as the last one. So that's the first pass. All these fasteners now you can see are fastened down to 50 inch-pounds. So I'm just going to bump it up. So I'm at 65 now. Just going to do the same thing. I'll start in the center. You can see it's barely even moving it. Like, as you notice when you remove them, these aren't super duper tight. I'm just going to go put all of these fasteners around to 65 inch-pounds. And finally our last pass at 80 inch-pounds. I'm going to barely move. You can see just barely moving. One last check at 80 inch-lbs. Good. 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 All right, and we are all set. Now we can get the ignition coils back in place, and that was those fasteners there. You might want to clean those up as well. Those are T30s, also a very low torque spec of just 70 inch-lbs. Now we can connect the electrical for each of these ignition coils. I replaced some of these connectors. Actually, on this side I had to replace all of them. I'll put up a timestamp. I'll show that later in the video because I had to do some on the other side too. To get these back in place, you're just going to get them on until they snap. You can see that part there. That corresponds with where the little snappy thing is. Just push them in until they snap. Snap. And just get all either 3 on your V6 or 4 on your V8 in on this side. Since we're done over here on this right side, I'm going to go ahead and put the auxiliary pump back where it goes. It just goes on here. It just fits right in. Just push it in place, just like that. We can go ahead and replace this hose now, and that hose goes back here, as you can see, into that kind of T junction there. And to get that out, we're just going to pull it straight up. You got to pull it straight up because see how there's kind of 2 paths? There's a little plastic part of that plastic T that has a little depth to it, so you got to pull it up to clear it. That's about the best I can do with the camera. I'm just reaching in, leaning in over the front of the car, the intake, and this is what I mean. I'm just going to grab this and pull this straight up. Sometimes you got to use a pry to get it started. Let me see if I can just pull it though. Oh, it feels like it's coming up, and I want to keep pulling it straight up. All right, there we go. You can pull this T out now, this top one. I'll try not to block with my hand, but I'm just going to pull that up to get that out. When I rewatched the video that I just shot, when I couldn't see that there's a feature on there that is not there, and that's the part that is unfortunately broken off right in there. So that deal there, that's part of this T, but it broke off. And so I'm going to have to get in there and pull that out. I think it's about 1.5 inches long or so, so I'm thinking I might be able to get in behind there with a pick and bring it out. But we'll see. If I can film it, I will. It's pretty tight in there though. Alright, so there it is there, and I guess I will film it since I can barely see this without the camera. So I'll first try going in here with this pick to see if I can get under it and pull it up. And doesn't look like that's gonna work. Okay. Well, might try to suck it out with the vacuum cleaner. So that pick is not working. I'm gonna try one of these smaller picks. I straightened this out, but I feel like this hook is too thin and too brittle. It's resisting quite a bit, that little tube, so I'm afraid that I might break this, and if I break that, then I'm definitely going to have to remove the throttle body to get a broken piece of metal out of there. So I'm going to try to come up with a different way. Well, that was a little bit of a delay, but thanks to St. Joseph, thank heavens, this is out, and it came out in one piece. But I'll show you here this is what I was expecting when I was saying when you pull it up. I think it goes like that. When I was saying when you pull it up to clear it, that's the piece I was talking about. But when that wasn't there, I said, uh-oh. So if yours isn't there, it'll be stuck in that hole like mine was. Now that hole is behind the throttle plate. So worst case scenario, we take the throttle body off and then pull it out. Please leave a comment if you happen to know whether or not it's okay to turn that electronic throttle plate by hand, because that would be the easiest option, would be to turn the plate. If this doesn't work, to turn the plate so you can get in there, get right behind it with a tool, and then push this thing out from below. I don't know that. I don't know how that works with the TPS on this electronic throttle body. So if you happen to know, please leave a comment. Since I didn't know, I just went in the old school way and pulled it out with hooks. So you can see I cut this hose here because I'm going to be replacing it, and it was just so brittle on there. I'll have to replace this part. I'll put up a part number. Let me show you why this didn't work my first try. I did have to move the camera. I just couldn't work around it. This wasn't working because it's just not quite long enough. It's long enough there, but I was trying to grab here or here, wherever I was trying to grab, it was just slipping too much. So it's not long enough, and when I was biting with this, I was like, oh boy, that's in there tight. And this thing was in there tight. So what I ended up doing was I made two little hooks with some wire. Just use some, just regular like tie wire, rebar wire, and make a nice 90-degree turn while it's long, and then cut it. And you want to cut it to be a little bit like that size. I'll put up a measurement, and then file this down. You want to really file this down. You don't want it to be scratchy. See, it's not even catching on my glove. And I made 2 of those. And the plan was, because 1 is great but 2 is better, I was going to go in with 1 like this and catch on one side, get that to focus. And then once that's in place, you can slide in the other one and catch on, one of the other sides. Here we go. So something like that, wherever it happened to be, just so I could get an extra double good bite there. So this is obviously all blind. So if we pretend that the Amazon box is the throttle body and we have this little piece stuck in there, this is how this went. Now you're kneeling on the cross member above the radiator. You're leaning in over the air intake, and you're looking through a little tiny space about this big between the bottom of the expansion tank and the top of the intake. Then you grab your little hooks, and carefully you're gonna go down, push it past, and then pull up until it hooks. So I just felt it hook. Now this box doesn't weigh much, so I'll pick the whole box up with this hook. Then you want to go in with your second one, and you have them just the right size, otherwise there's not enough room for both of them in there. So get them both on. Okay, they are both hooked, and then pull up. All right, now it was a lot harder to pull than you just saw out of this box. I had to use a fair amount of force, to be honest. I was a little like, oh boy. When I first budged it, I said, okay, good, it's moving. And then I realized, boy, this thing is pretty solid. So I don't think this thing is at risk of breaking apart. I really don't. If you can get under it, I mean, I'm trying to bend this thing. If you can get under it with them hooks and pull up, I think you'll be okay. I don't think this is the type of thing that would shatter into a million pieces, but maybe I'm wrong. At least this one didn't. So it looks like my local Napa can get this in a few days. I already have these hoses, and I have these little connectors. I did not order this part, and there is the part number you can see. So that's a Mercedes part, might be the original one. And this hose is really brittle. I'll pull it off on this side because I might need a tool for the other one. Just pulling this hose back, okay? You can see this little connector. And this doesn't come with this part. So that's why I don't want to break it. I'll try to get this little connector deal off. Let's just cut this. Let's see if I can get it off now that it's got a slice in that. can see this is kind of like a rubbery material, so I'm using the blade to cut this. Just took a nice slice all the way across there. There you go. Look at that. So yeah, I'm gonna add all these parts to the list of parts you want to have on hand. These here look good. I'll put up a part number, but I think I'll be able to reuse these, get them cleaned up. I'm gonna grab the other end of the hose that I cut, which was that other end coming out of that T. Where did it go? Back here. Okay. And you can see when I'm moving it, it's moving this right here. So that hose connects to this hose. You can actually see it right there. Okay, so I might be able to grab that. We're gonna have to take this up anyway to get this out for the valve cover. So good time to go ahead and just start doing work on this side for the valve cover. So before I disconnect this hose, I'll go ahead and depressurize the fuel system and then disconnect that fuel line. To depressurize the fuel rail, I'm going to use an attachment from this kit. This is OEM Tools Test Kit 57167. You can rent this for free at AutoZone. And always make sure that if you rent it, it's got all the parts there. So look at the map and make sure it has all the parts. The only parts we're going to need, as you can see, this is brand new. This is a brand new one. Only parts we're going to need is this right here, the clear hose and the gauge, because the standard fitting on the end of here is a Schrader valve fitting, and there's a Schrader valve on the fuel rail, so we can just put this on and press this button here. That button doesn't quite feel right, but press that button there, and then we can drain any fuel into a little container. The Schrader valve that I'm talking about is right here. It's right here on the valve cover here on the right side, and underneath this cap you'll see it's basically like an oversized version of a tire valve. You see there? Let me get this to focus. You can see that little stem. Now that little stem in there, if you don't have access to a kit like you'll see in the video here, you can press in on that little stem. Just like you were letting air out of a tire, that will let the fuel out. You need to have a bag ready to catch it, and it's going to be pressurized, so you want to be advised of that. You want to just barely press it at first until you can get the pressure to drop. Collect what you can here. There will probably still be fuel that will leak up at the part of the rail where we're going to disconnect, so we will have to collect some fuel, but we'll try to keep it as clean as possible. So I got the other end of that clear hose into a container. I'm going to put this down here in a place where it's not going to fall. And this here is where the Schrader valve is, so I'm just going to undo this cap. And then with this end here, it's just the same end that comes on it. We don't need any attachments. We should be able to tap right onto that. Let's see. Yep. Alright. It's a little bit of fuel leaking in my hand there, but not too much. So then what I can do is just press this button here, and that will go ahead and allow the fuel to go into our little container if there's any fuel pressure. Well, it looks like this might actually be pretty much depressurized, seeing as it's been sitting here for days waiting on parts and all. So I'll just go ahead and remove this, and I'll just double check by just barely pressing in on the valve there. So I'll put a bag here, and I'll just kind of seal it around there and then press through the bag on that valve. See if anything comes out. And I'm not getting anything, so this is depressurized. So I'll put that cap back on, and we can go ahead and disconnect that fuel line. I got tape on here, but I'm actually going to slip this plastic on here too, because I don't want any fuel getting into any under the valve cover area. I'm going to try to get on there first with a flare, but my flare is pretty short, so I might have to use a longer wrench. Let's see. We're going to turn this counterclockwise, which is going to be towards you, towards the camera. Let's see if I can budge this. There it is. All right. And get the paper towels under there before we go any further. In case there's some fuel that leaks. Probably should have put those on first. We'll need a couple more bags and some zip ties when we pull this back, just to be able to protect these from dirt. So I'm going to undo this by hand now. Oh, a little more than I was expecting there. Might have to grab another paper towel. Let me see. Yeah, it's more than I was expecting there. It's not spraying out or anything, but I might just try to pull this back and slip a bag over that right now. I'll go ahead and fasten this back up. Like I said, it's not like pouring out. It's not spraying out. But there's a little bit there. So I've got the paper towels there, but I also got a little bag just so I can catch maybe some of that fuel. I'll have to stop it there and pull the bag out. I emptied the bag and put it back. We'll see what else we get here. If you do this thing with the bag, just make sure you make a low point on the bottom of the bag for the fuel to run towards. Nope, gonna have to stop that again. Looks like it might be finally dying down. Alright, it's done. Like I said, a bit more than I was expecting, but not really too bad. I'm going to clean this before I stick it in the bag. Okay. Don't want to get any dirt on the end there. I'll put this in a bag. And then I'll also kind of cover the bag with some tape so that it doesn't get bounced up against anything. Alright, so we got both ends of the fuel line covered up. I got that one up and out of the way, and I'll show you how much fuel I collected right here. So a fair amount. Be ready for that. Now we can work on getting this plastic cover for the wiring harness up. These little clips here, they're plastic. They'll probably break, but let's see. I'm going to push the clip that way, and there we go. I'll do this one as well. That one's on there a little bit more, and okay, it doesn't look like there's one down there, so looks like that ought to be enough for me to reach back here and just kind of push on the other end of that hose that I cut and slip this out now that it's off of here. There it goes. Alright, so there's our connection there. Then this hose we're going to have to undo, so I think I'll go ahead and do that now. I'm probably just going to cut that since I'm replacing this hose. This is definitely one of those jobs where something as simple as a hose removal turns into like a 15-minute operation. You're going to hear the vacuum because I'm just going to suck up all the little bits of stuff as I basically destroy the end of that hose. There's the hose in pieces. And you can see that's where there's a connector. I'm going to keep it in this same orientation because I'll just put it back together, the new hoses. There's the part number for that shorter hose, A112 018 0282. And the part number for the longer hose here is A112 018 0182. We'll get the electrical now for each one of these coils, and just like on the other side, be real careful because these are pretty easy to break. I'm anticipating that I might break some of these. I can get a pretty good look on the camera on this one, so I'm going to get in here with the pick to get that to clear it. Hopefully it doesn't break. And it broke just like on the other side, so I'll be replacing a few of these. There's a part number on the back here, and they aren't too difficult to replace, but here we go. Get under here. That one, man, that one you barely even touch it and it just breaks. And you just get too brittle, I guess. I broke 3 of those little things. Only that last one did I not break. You can see there's a little zip tie here. We're going to cut that so we can pull the wire harness up. Just when you're cutting the zip tie, be sure you don't accidentally cut the wire. we can move this harness out of the way. You see I labeled them like I did on the other side. Just it's fairly obvious where each goes, but obviously that's timing, so we don't want to mess with that. I'm going to remove this heat shield here for the fuse box. There's just a couple of Phillips fasteners, one there and one down on this side. And that'll just give us, it looks like maybe a 1/4 inch more worth of clearance to push the coils back. Now we'll get these coils out, and just like on the other side, these are all T30s. There's just one bolt in each of these, holding it in as a mounting location. Catch that. Alright, now we'll put that coil to the side. Do that for the other 3. There are those 4 fasteners. Now we just need to get these coils in a position where they're not going to interfere. This valve cover is a little different than the one on the other side because there's a couple long features, and we need to be able to pull straight up. We can't have any side to side, so we want to have these coils tucked out of the way as much as possible. Hopefully that will work there with the position of the coils. It looks like we got enough room to hit all of those fasteners, those 11 fasteners. I'm going to do the breather cover on this side, and I'm going to try to take the breather cover off with the valve cover still on the head, then take the valve cover off. But before I do any of that, I'm going to spend some time in here cleaning up, vacuuming, and shooting some compressed air. You can see right there, I'll put an arrow on it. That's the gasket surface for the valve cover, and there's the gasket surface for the breather cover. So we want to have those clean so nothing falls in there when we break each one of those free. I cleaned things up a bit. Now I'm going to go ahead and take these 3 fasteners here, here, and here out for that breather cover, and those are all T20s. These are the original aluminum screws. They shouldn't be too tight at all. And again, like I've mentioned a couple times, you do not want to reuse these. You want to make sure you replace them. You can see the gasket maker on the end of this one. So you have to remember to clean these holes out really well before you put the new screws in. With those 3 screws out on the breather cover, I'm now going to break free all of the 11, or if you're doing the V6 engine, 9 bolts all around the perimeter. Kind of hard to see, but here are the fasteners on the bottom. There's that one there all the way to the front, which is easy to see, and then the others, like that one there, right there, and right there. You just got to look kind of between where those wires are going in. I'm going to break all of those free, and then just once I have all those free, I won't do anything else except break them free. Then we'll be able to remove these 4 on the top, because those are bolts that go all the way through this breather cover. And just as it was on the other side, these are all E10s. And we'll go ahead and start on the perimeter. Not very tight at all. Might need a longer extension. Nope. Okay, we'll go back down over here. These are just a little harder to reach over the fuse box than on the other side than they were on the other side. And we've got one. Okay. Go back over here. I'm going to try a little smaller setup here for those bottom ones. This 1/4 inch drive is a little bit easier to get on there. Oh yeah, that's much easier to get on there. This setup actually worked pretty well. This is one of the it's a deep socket. It's from Harbor Freight with this little flex head. It was kind of difficult to get the larger ratchet in there, but this worked pretty well. As I did on the other side, I always like to just make a template, even though it's not really necessary on here because we know that the long bolts are the ones going through the breather cover and the short bolts are on the perimeter. So we'll get to work on this breather cover now. Remove all these 4 long fasteners. Long ones. So with the 3 screws and the 4 long bolts out, the only thing holding the breather cover in place is that RTV that's leaking. So you don't want to use any kind of metal. I'm going to get in here with my plastic pry, see if I can find anywhere where I can possibly get a little bite. Okay, it just broke right there just from giving it a little nudge. Alright, I'll go down on the other side. See if I got a spot I can work with. Maybe down here. Okay, you can probably hear that it is breaking free there. And it feels like it's almost all the way up. There we go. I think maybe this one was easier to break because it's already leaking quite a bit. I cleaned it up, but it was all leaking down here. So that means, you know, there's not a perfect seal between the surfaces with the RTV. But if that didn't work for you, if you're not able to pry with your hands or the plastic tool, you can get a piece of wood and then just pick a good spot and then hit the back of the wood with ideally a dead blow hammer. If you don't have a dead blow hammer, use a regular hammer. But a couple other areas you might be able to maybe, can't really get the wood back there, but you could get it right here. See, like there, or alternatively right there. You're just trying to get some impact so that it just barely breaks the adhesion that the RTV has. So I'll keep going with this, but I don't need it to come off all the way since I'm going to do this on the bench. So that's cool. I'll leave that right like that. And then I will go ahead and pull the rest of the fasteners out, and then we'll pull the valve cover off. And that there is the shorter fastener. That's what all the rest of these are. That's all 11 fasteners out. Now I'm just going to temporarily install these new screws here just to hold the breather cover a little bit onto the valve cover so that when I'm pulling up on it, it stays together and doesn't fall off or something like that. I'm not putting them in all the way, just barely. Now I'm just going to look for a spot to pry. I'm thinking maybe back here. Don't look like I got anything back there. Might try to grab it there and pull up on it. Don't pull up here or on this part, obviously, since just broke it free, so it's not gonna. That's just gonna break it's just gonna move the top. It's not gonna move the bottom part, the valve cover. Let's see where I might be able to get a pry. Looks like I might be able to get in right here. Let's see. I'm gonna try that back side. Almost. There it is. All right. So now, last chance. And make sure you got that all nice and clean before we took this up and pull this off. Okay. And we want to pull it kind of straight up. Looks like the gasket's kind of half on, half off. Not sure if it's going to come up with the valve cover or if it's going to stick on the head. Pull it straight up. There we go. So the valve cover has cleared. Looks like this gasket. I'm going to have to kind of grab the gasket. Oops, that's my stool there going. There we go. I'm just a little bit caught down here. There we go. Alright. Just like on the other side, if you've got any places where there's like kind of caked on stuff that you're afraid you might hit when you're putting the valve cover back on, cover that up and get in there with some brake cleaner on a shop towel and push that up and over, out. So now we'll just go all around and clean up the mating surface. You can see where this one was leaking because you can see this stain on the manifold there. This was leaking enough that was giving that burning spell. There's a half moon just like this way down here on this side that on the V8 is kind of hard to see, but you want to get in there and check that too. You might want to use a mirror or use the cell phone. Let's see if I can get it on the cell phone. Right there. So you want to get in there and clean that up. So we'll just get in there, clean up all the oil off the head, make sure that surface is nice and clean. Now we can work on this valve cover. I'm just going to peel the gasket all the way off. These are the features that I was talking about where you want to pull it up, straight up. We'll have to remember those when we're putting it back, installing it. So I'll just come back here now and remove those new screws. And take this breather cover off all the way now. Those screws are out now. I can pull this off all the way. You can see that old gasket maker there. I wouldn't be surprised if this is the factory original. There's the other side. So now what we got to do is clean both surfaces. This channel here where the RTV is, all that old RTV's got to go out, and also here, there, around there, wherever else it was. And just get all this out, get it nice and cleaned up. I'll clean it up with some brake cleaner just so we have a real nice surface for that new RTV to stick to. And we'll do the same thing all along the channel on here. The other thing you want to make sure you do in here on the valve cover is to clean out these holes. Those are the holes where those little screws go, because there's going to be all kinds of RTV in there. So get in there, really clean that out. And then you might want to also remove any of the RTV that don't want around these holes here. Just get all this cleaned up, but also on the inside too. Only use plastic tools. Don't use any kind of metal tools. This is pretty easy to scratch. Look at this here, that screw hole there. That's one of the screw holes where one of the aluminum screws was in. One like these. And you can see that's a bunch of aluminum bits. So I was in there to clean out the RTV and whatnot with this pick, and that's all the stuff I brought up to the top. So be sure to go into each one of these holes. Again, there are three. One here, one here, and then one here. Make sure you go through and clean those holes out. I spent quite a bit of time cleaning up all this area here, which is like a ridge. And this is not the side that we'll be applying the RTV to. We'll apply the RTV to the cover. But this ridge has got to be real clean. Also the bolt holes there. And those are the through holes. Just got all of this cleaned up. There was just RTV on all of those places. So it takes quite a while. Take your time and get it real cleaned. Then on the cover here, the bottom of the cover, this channel Same deal. This channel has got to be spick and spam, if I can get that to focus, all the way around here. And each one of these, the flanges here on the outside of that bolt, that'll have some RTV on there, clean that off. And then that there, the inside there, you can see there's a little tiny ridge, and that's got to be cleaned up. Another flange here, another ridge there, that flange, and that flange, and then the ridge there. And you just want to get this really cleaned up, this part too. Make sure you clean up this. Now you can either put the valve cover on the head and then come back and put this breather cover on the valve cover, or you can put the RTV on with everything on the bench and put the breather cover on and put the 3 little screws in and then put the whole thing on. I think I'm actually going to try putting this breather cover on after I've got the valve cover already seated. That's just because then I'll already have these bottom fasteners in, because you do want to work fairly quickly. Once you open up the RTV and get it on the bottom here in these channels, ideally you want to get this thing pretty much all together with all the bolts torqued down within about 10 minutes or so. It appears that this one just got old and started cracking right there. You can see a crack there, and this is a Mercedes gasket. It might be the original. Yeah, it's cracked there. We'll go ahead and install the valve cover gasket now. You can see this part is wider down here than it is on the other side, and that'll be helpful for us to put the new cover on, because this part here, this flat part here, is going to go there. So we can line it up and just get this thing pushed into place all the way around. There's the new gasket in place, and just like on the other side, go around and press all the way around, the whole length, to make sure you have it in there really well. And also, as I mentioned on the other side, some people like to put a little dot of RTV here, and as well on the same feature on the other end. Like I said, I'm not going to do that on this one because this Mercedes-Benz gasket seems to fit quite well. So we'll go without the RTV, but I will make sure that it's pressed in all the way. And again, it should not fall out. It shouldn't even move, budge, change locations at all when you flip it upside down. As also I mentioned on the other side, if you're having trouble with the fit on the gasket and you're using an aftermarket gasket, that may be the problem. You want to have a good fit, otherwise you'll probably be back in here doing it again. Also, as you saw on the other side, make sure you take the time to go and clean up the threads on all of the fasteners for the valve cover. Double check that you've got this mating surface all cleaned up top and bottom, and that there's not any spots where some oil has dripped down while you were working on cleaning the valve cover. That spot way back in the corner there is the hardest one to reach and to see, so you might want to get back there with a mirror. You can kind of use the bolt holes for alignment as you get near to where you need to be. Let's see. Right about there. Okay, that looks good. Now we'll start putting some bolts in just on the corners. Obviously, we don't want to put those bolts in yet. I just have the 4 corner bolts in. I'm just going to put this here just to protect from anything possibly falling in there. I don't have the gasket maker on it yet. And I'm going to use the mirror like we did on the other side to make sure that the gasket has not folded anywhere, especially on that side down there where it's very hard to see. Don't know what you'll be able to see, but I'll go back in here with the mirror. And I don't know if you can see that, but the gasket looks good. It is not folded around there on that half moon. That corner as well is a place where it could possibly fold, and it's not. We'll take a peek up here. That looks good. I'll put this lid on here, and I'm just going to go ahead and run one of these long bolts through and then finish. This is just obviously a temporary install on the long bolt, and then finish putting the perimeter bolts in place. I've got all those perimeter, the short bolts installed, so I'm just going to remove these long bolts. which I just put in there to help with alignment. Take this breather cover off and apply the RTV. And that way, I'll be able to get all these bolts torqued down a little bit more efficiently. Cover that up just in case while we're working. Now for our RTV, we have 7 places. Here, 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 and there. One part that goes across, and then the entire perimeter that we need to apply the RTV, and it's going to be about a 2mm bead. I'll put up a timestamp here to go back earlier in the video when I was resealing the other breather cover. This left side cover is harder just because it's much bigger, especially on the V8, and I just couldn't work around the camera. But the technique and the goal are the same as shown before. You just want to place the RTV like a rope into that channel. Just try to get a nice 2mm bead and make sure you get around all those bolt holes. So that's how I'm going to do it. You can see I don't have a whole lot on there at all. So we pull this off. Go ahead and place this on now. Now the name of the game is just getting this in place without missing. So I'm just going to carefully look. And I'm going to use the bolt hole here to align it and drop it right into place. Get in there with those fasteners now. Get this in so that the cover stays where it needs to be. And again, try to get everything assembled within about 10-15 minutes on the breather cover reseal. Then you want to wait about 24 hours before starting the engine to allow the RTV to cure. I just took this cap off because it was easier to kind of balance that on its back without the cap on when I was putting that RTV on. Now we'll go ahead and get these, got a little RTV on here. Get these stainless steel fasteners down, and the torque on these is just 35 inch-pounds, very low, very low. I'll show you what that looks like. But I realize that a lot of people probably don't even have a torque wrench that goes that low. This little Teflon goes that low. It's a great torque wrench. Alright. I'm just going to go several passes until they all get pretty close. There's 35. Now we can go ahead and get the valve cover bolts in and start torquing this down all the way. These big old long ones. 4 of those. And then just like on the other side, we're going to make a bunch of passes, kind of working from the center out like that, tightening the fasteners. And our final torque on these is also going to be just 80 inch-pounds. So I'll probably go, again, 50, set my little torque wrench for 50 inch-pounds, then 65 inch-pounds, and then 80 inch-pounds. So they're all at 50. I'm going to adjust up now to 65 inch-pounds and just do that same pass again. That's 65. Again, just kind of starting somewhere in one of this center bolts, top or bottom. I'll just go straight to 65. Maybe not. Maybe I'll do 2 passes to get to 65. Now they're all at 65. I'm going to take it up to the final torque in 2 passes, which will be 80 inch-lbs. Right? 80 inch-lbs. All right. Now we can get the coils back into place on their mounting locations. If you remember, it was just these fasteners, and those are those T30s. I'm going to start in the back here, I think. This just goes in here and then line up. Just be careful not to drop this because it's a little bit awkward. And torque on these was very low, just 70 inch-lbs. That's it. Now we can get this heat shield back into place, and that was just those 2 little self-tapping Phillips screws there, and it looks like this ridge on the bottom, I'm going to have to just kind of line it up. So I'm looking here at that hole with that hole, and then over here, and I noticed there's like a little part on the top that's going to have to slip over. So it's pretty close on this side. It looks like it's in. Okay, it looks like it's in on both sides. Yeah, that's in. And we can get those little screws in. Now we can get the electrical plug back in for each one of these coils. If you didn't break yours, like I broke mine, you could just push those in. I broke all but one of these on this side, so I'm going to replace the connector. I'll show you how to do that next. Here's the brand new connector from the Mercedes dealer. You can see the part number there, 203-545-3028. And there aren't any terminals in here. All we have to do is remove the broken one, pull the wires out, grab this one, stick the wires in. It's very easy to change them out. And here's what you want to do. You want to, on the top here, have it on this side here, not the side with the tab, but this side with these little parts showing. Get under here with a small screwdriver, lift this up, and break each one of these off like this. Okay, and then get those out of your way. Then with those broken and out of your way, go in here on the top. So between the plastic and the end, go in here and press back, and what you're going to be trying to do, I'll show you in a second, is break this little piece of plastic behind it. See that there? A little piece of plastic that I just broke, right there. Do that for the other 2, so same spot. You're going to get in. Right there, not here because that just goes all the way through. Right there. Push till you break the plastic. Okay, then the last one. Okay, I might need to do a little more on that middle one. Okay, so those are all broken now. Now, this next step, we're just going to push these out. Don't push them out all the way. You want to get into the bottom here with the screwdriver, so underneath the end there. Just get in there, and you're just going to push the screwdriver in. And as you're pushing it in, that end will kind of move back. See that? All right. Go to the next one, right in there. Oops, not that. See, I just went in there. You don't want to do that. Under it there. Okay. Push back. You see it moved. And then this last one, same deal. Under there. Under. Push it. There it goes. Okay, now at this point, you can grab a slightly larger screwdriver. And then just kind of, don't push them too hard. They have to just kind of break the weather, that little weather grommet in the back. Just going to push it back, each one. Don't push them all the way out because you want to keep them in order. Okay, so just pushing them back. Okay. That one's a little tougher. Okay, there it is. There it is, all right. Don't mess up the order of these wires. Grab your new connector, this one here. Flip it this way so it's the same orientation. See those tabs there, the ones you broke? Don't flip it this way, that's the hook side. And then just pull these out and swap them right in. Just like this. Don't mess up the order, get them in. Now you're going to push them in until they click. Sometimes you can do it with the wire, sometimes you have to kind of get in behind it with a tool. Looks like I'm going to have to get in behind it with the tool. So right here, all we're trying to do is get it past that thing that we broke. So you'll see when I press back here, I'm just going to press on that grommet and you'll see it move and snap. Snap. Okay, see how it just moved? Right there. To the next one. Snap. And the next one. Snap. Okay. So they're all in there. The connector is replaced. So for your last inspection, just want to go in here and look. Here, there, and there real closely. Make sure those tabs are past the little plastic thing that we broke on the old connector. And then your end terminals should be all the way down here. And then you can take your larger screwdriver, just press each one, make sure it doesn't move. And that's it. That's how you replace the ignition coil connector. And now we can just get those connections back in. You can see they're just going to snap into place. Snap. And this last one over here. Snap. There was a zip tie on mine there, so I just put another zip tie back there. On this one, there was also a zip tie on this front ignition coil on the right side. We can get that fuel line reconnected now. So I'm just going to take off my little protective cover that I put here and on the other side. So we can get this back lined up. Gotta get it just right for that to catch on the threads. There it is. Torque on this flare nut for the fuel line is going to be 28 foot-pounds. I'm just going to tighten it up a little bit with my wrench and then come in with the crow's foot. There it is right there. All right. We'll try to get this connector out here, hopefully to be able to reuse it. Let's see. Yeah, I think I'll cut them. Got some slits on there. Alright. So that was like that. I just cut a big old chunk out of that one because it's just so brittle. And I should be able to get this thing out. Alright, so our layout was like this. And our new hoses. This long one is this here. I'm going to use this one, and let's see if it does have a certain direction. You can see there's more length past that angle there and less length here, so that's going to be going like that. And our connector will go there, and our other new hose, this little one here. And I cut the side of that one off. Oh, look at that. That's even got a Mercedes star on there. That's interesting. So I guess this company is the OE company. Rhine or Rain, I don't know how you say that, but it looks like they're the ones who make the Mercedes part, and that's going to go like that. So that'll go together like so. I'm going to clean this up, and then on the inside and outside that little connector, and I'm going to just probably lubricate the ends, make it a little easier to get the hoses on. So I just put a little light layer of rubber grease on there. We'll get this thing back together. Alright, and then this side here, and then this will be ready to go when it's time to install. Okay, something I just noticed as well on this hose is that there's a scratch out part, and usually that means that they're just scratching out that they are the OE maker and they're just scratching out the OE stamp. And if we compare it, looks like that's exactly what's going on there. I'll just pass that information along so you don't pay extra for the Mercedes part. NUP was not able to get this in for me, so I had to order this from the Mercedes dealer, and it came today, and as you can see, they've redesigned this. You can also see it's a little thinner, way more flexible. So they must have had this issue a few times. I'm going to go ahead and drop this in place on the end of the hose where it needs to go here. If you notice on the hose here, there's a little square. That's an alignment point and also an indication of which hose touches. So square to square, and then on this side there's a triangle. That triangle is going to go there. And then on this side you could see there's a circle, and that's because there's a circle on the hose that goes on that side. So like before, I'm just going to put a little rubber grease on these connectors and get this hose back in place. So that's going to push in there all the way in, and then triangle to triangle. It's going to be a little tighter fit. There we go. That other last hose is this here. You see the part number there, and I'm going to use that company again. As you can see there, that also has the Mercedes star on it. So if you buy the hoses from that company, you're getting the genuine Mercedes parts. And the same as we saw on the other ones, there's a circle here and a circle there. Got a little rubber grease on there. We'll just go ahead and get this together. So now we have this set up, and the way it goes in the vehicle, if you remember, is actually like that, because this goes to the right side, that goes to the left side. So we'll see if it's possible to install it like this. So I'm going to try to kind of slip this in towards where the opening is on the throttle body. If you remember, we kind of pulled this up, so let me pull this up real quick with these little deals. And it kind of slipped under here, so I'm going to kind of just route it under there. Let's see what we can do. I'm up on the cross beam again, like I was when I was trying to get that broken piece out. Maybe on the cross beam, get a little better angle in here. Alright. Okay, it's pretty close. Let's see if I can. Yeah, it looks like that's going to work there. Looking in through here, before I put this piece in, if you remember that brake booster line right here, that line just pushed into this hole here on the top. I'm going to need both hands to do it, but it just pushes in right there, right where I have it lined up. You just want to push this in all the way like that. See, there's that flange. It stops right there. Then I'm going to go ahead and put this in place back onto here, and you can see that is where the tube part goes, right there, and then the other part goes there. I don't know what you're going to be able to see back there. I'm leaning in again over the intake to get this lined up, and you can just see it. I think I got it pretty close there, and I'll just push it into place. Let's see. Okay, feels like it's going in. Alright. Push it all the way down. Feels like it's in. Have a look. There it is there, that's in. You can see it's pushed all the way down. And then the circle is going to line up once we have this on the other side lined up here to that part of the hose. You can see here this hose just sits on top just like that. You don't have to tuck it in anywhere, and it goes right here. I'm just going to lubricate this with a little bit of rubber grease, make that easier to get on, and get this back in place here. Alright, and there you can see those circles are aligned. Then this hose here goes there. There we go. Alright, and I will tuck this in back under here. And that went kind of like this, right there. Okay. We just have one more hose, which is the one that goes there. If you remember, that connects to the air duct, so that's one we'll do last. Just double check that you've got this hose in. This is the hose that goes straight, goes into that little connector to the short squiggly hose. Then that goes over to the air distribution piece, which should be pushed into the throttle body like that. Make sure you've got this hose here that I'm wiggling. That's the one from the brake booster that goes into that air distribution piece. See your triangles and your circles, and then you follow the circle one down, and that goes into that right side breather cover. Now for this gasket here on this air hose, I'm going to pop this gasket out and show you where some of the confusion comes from with these gaskets. There's two sizes. There's the smaller size, which is this size here. I'll put that part number up, and I'll show you on here the old Mercedes part number, but there is a new Mercedes part number. The old Mercedes part number is 112 1410180. That's the old Mercedes part number. The new Mercedes part number for that smaller size is this here, 112-159-0080. So I'm using this brand, so that's their part number, and that's what it looks like. It doesn't have the Mercedes part number or the star on it. But the other part number that you might find when researching these gaskets is this one. This is Mercedes 112-159-0180, and this is the bigger gasket. You can also see it doesn't have the same kind of rigidity as the smaller gasket does, and you can also see that you'll never get this in here. It's just too big. There's just no way. That's just not going to happen. So if you don't know in advance what kind of duct you have here, then I would just buy both of these, but I'll give you a part number in case that helps on this duct. 112-141-0004. I'm going to go ahead and replace that now. Just grab this seal and stick it in here. It's flexible enough. I don't think I need to lubricate it. I'll just get it in there just like that, and that looks good. And now for this air duct, which is not going to be fun on this V8. Not so bad on the V6, but it is a real pain on the V8. This little hook right here is going to get in your way the whole time. So I'll probably end up putting the blocks there like I did to take it out. There is the hose, if you remember, on this side here. I'm going to try, and that goes over to the left side valve cover. I'm going to try installing it, at least getting it back there without that hose on. I don't have any special way of getting this thing in. Just don't lose your patience and be careful, because it's got plastic parts, and as much of a pain as it was to get out, it's going to be that much of a pain to get back in. If I figure out any special tips, I certainly will let you know. Yep. Alright, tip 1, undo these bolts again and put the blocks there. Okay, that looks better than it did a second ago. Let's see what we got here. Okay, the little hook thing is right by the EGR pipe, like it's going to get stuck and break on it. And then this hook thing on the top, oh cool, just went past that. Alright, so let me show you what I got here. So you saw the angle that I put it in there, and then what I had to do was get that hook past the EGR pipe there And then this on the bottom was bumping up against here, so I had to get it out. So there is the angle that I'm in right now. I think that hook, I might be able to sneak it past there. Have to work really carefully because it's easy to break either that one on the top or the hook on the bottom. It's the best I'm going to be able to do with this light here. Maybe that'll give you a little better view. So I'm just going to try to sneak the hook past the EGR valve. Oh man, it's tight. I don't know if it's going to make it. Okay, so now I'm kind of caught. This thing is caught on the hose clamp on that coolant hose that goes to the heater core. So I might just spin that hose clamp. Let me see if I can just sneak around it. Or if I can pull this coolant tank out just a little bit. It's gonna come out. I might go back a little bit. Let's see. Oh, it's so close. Okay, just cleared it. Is this hook on something? Okay, just cleared. Alright. Just cleared that hose clamp. Now I'm trying to get past here without busting the hook on the bottom of this thing. Okay, just got past. I'm going to show you what I got. Okay, there's the view there. Take note of where the end is. And it was this hose clamp right here. Was catching on this plastic part, the top clamp, or brace, whatever you want to call that. And the little hook, let's see if I can even see it. I'll put my hand on it right here. That hook thing was getting caught on the EGR valve. So I think I'm just past it, almost to the throttle body over there. So I'm thinking maybe I might be able to sneak in there. Okay, here we go. Oh, yeah, I got a little bit of room now. Oh my gosh, I'm in. Oh, sweet. Oh, sweet, I'm in. Let me show you. Alright, I snuck past everything there. I'll put an arrow on it. You can see that one on the top is just about lined up with the feature on the air intake. That's where that snaps into. So there's the hook down there. I'll put an arrow on that. I just got to get that seated in over the throttle body. You see there's a little space right there. Just got to push that in to place. Before I do that, I think I'll go ahead and try to place that other hose. This is the other hose here that I'm talking about. I'll put that part number up. And this hose goes with this less crooked side to the air duct, and then this more squiggly side to the valve cover. I'm going to take these blocks out, put these fasteners back on, and then do that hose. I'm back up on top of the cross member again, leaning in over the intake, and that's because I can see right there where that hose is going to go. So I'm going to put a little rubber grease on that and reach in and slip that hose on. Not going to be able to film it, but you can get my drift here. I am literally up on the cross member again though. That's the only way I can reach this. There it is there. Finally got it in. I ended up moving that over a little bit. You can see the throttle body there. And I just moved it over a little so I can I could get a grip with my left hand on that duct and then reach back here with my right hand and push it on. The other end of that hose you want to route under the fuel line right here. So now I'll just go ahead and get that duct placed onto the throttle body there and make sure the little clip on the bottom is snapped in place. You can kind of feel, you kind of use the hook to feel on the bottom. There's a little spot where the hook goes around the throttle body. I just heard the thing snap, that little hook on the bottom snap. I'll try to show you with the cell phone camera, but you can't see it. The only way you'd be able to see it is if you slip a cell phone in here. I'm going to to show you here on this V6 that clasp on the bottom of the duct because there's more room for the camera. You can see there, that's what you need to do. You kind of hear it snap into place. You can see it just hooks behind that little feature there on the throttle body. So we'll rock it in on the bottom first and get it to snap or close to snap, and then rock it in on the top. Once that's around the throttle body, you shouldn't really be able to move this. It should be very, very firmly on there. Then on the top of the duct here, make sure that that clasp that you see right there is tucked into that real nice, grabbing onto that feature there on the air intake. Just have a look at that. Then down here, the last hose that we need to connect there goes onto that breather cover, and I just put a little rubber grease on the breather cover side and get this into place. Alright, that's it on hoses. And now we can do this fastener here. That's that E10. We'll put that in place. Then get this dipstick. So there's that E10 in place, and also this one for the dipstick was that last bolt left, that 10mm hex head. Now just over here on this baffle, we can push the baffle into place on that little deal right there that you see. I'm just gonna smack it into place. There we go. Now we can put this housing back on for the MAF. This side here is the side that goes there. So we're just gonna push that in, get that lined up, and then tighten down that clamp. I'm gonna move this clamp actually so I have better access to it. Get that on there. And that was a 7mm. Just get this tightened up nice and tight. You can get the bottom of the air box in, and remember when we took it out, it's got those features there on the bottom, and they just fit into these grommets. I'm just going to lubricate these grommets with a little bit of rubber grease. That'll make it easier to get it in and out. The box goes in like this, with this duct facing this way and this duct facing this way. You just have to line it up with the hole, and you might have to grab the other end of that duct. Probably fell down like mine did. Just get it lined up into place here and pushed into. I'll get the ducts in place before I push it into those little grommets. There we go. Okay, make sure we're in there. Alright, those are all in. I'm going to stick a new air filter in. There is the part number there. And I always like to write the mileage and the date on there, just because it's easy to forget when you install these. And make sure you push it in all the way around the edge so it's in there real well, not just sitting on the top but actually tucked in. I want this to seal real well like that. And we can grab our lid and put that lid on. The other side of this is just these clips, if you remember, so we'll fold those back, get that together, and then loop this around and snap it, and then same thing on the bottom. Loop it around and snap. And then I'll show you something on these hooks on the air box that's just a little different. On these hooks on the air box, you don't want this to go all the way back like that, because you won't be able to get it closed. It just goes right there. Alright, so not like all the way back there. Just get it right there, and then you'll be able to close it. And there are, I think, 6 all the way around. Those 2 that you just saw, and then 1 on each side, and then 2 on that end. Make sure you get them all in there. If you took the air box out like me, right under here, you just want to push this coolant hose back into its place. So just get that hose in there like that, you can see, and then up here on this side, there's also a little part where it goes right there. And then if you were messing around with the expansion tank like I was, you probably had this out, so go ahead and put this back here into place. So next we'll start her up. We're going to have to prime the fuel system since we had that fuel line disconnected, but after she's primed she should start up just fine. Since we had the fuel line disconnected, we'll have to prime the system. I'm just going to turn the key to the on position where everything lights up, and I think I'll probably just do that twice and then try to start her up. Alright, so I did it twice there, and let's try to start her up now. There we go. Now we'll check for a fuel leak at that fuel line. So she runs, no vacuum leaks, no fuel leaks. If you've got a fuel leak, try first tightening that down just a little bit. Don't get gung-ho crazy on it, but try to tighten that down a little bit more if you got a fuel leak there. If you have a vacuum leak, if you're getting a weird kind of idle, go back and retrace to make sure that you didn't accidentally forget to connect a vacuum hose, or maybe even a clamp over here. You might have a problem on this side. For reference, this job typically books it about 3.5–4 hours at $120 an hour. You can save yourself a lot of money if you can do this yourself. Typically, the shop price on this for both sides and both valve covers is between $650 and $850. Obviously going to be closer to $1,000 if you decide to have it done at a dealer. But if you can do it yourself, you can save yourself a lot of money. So I hope this video was helpful for you with your valve covers and breather covers. Thank you for watching, and good luck with your repair.